Guys, it's Nick Cage as Dracula. What's up, guys? My name is Krisp. And 2 days ago, I saw the movie Renfield, and this was a movie that I was excited to see. So Renfield is directed by Krisp, the same guy who directed the Lego movie and the Lego Batman movie, both of which are very good movies, so of course he's got a really good resume following him into this film. Renfield is actually the unofficial sequel to the original 1931 Dracula film starring Bela Lugosi as the Count. It follows the story of Dracula's servant Renfield, who is basically trying to get out of a toxic relationship with his master. But between Dracula trying to keep him in his clutches and a side plot with a crime family and a cop he befriends, things quickly devolve into bloody mayhem that is spearheaded by the man himself, Nick Cage as Dracula. If you were to ask me what my favorite movie was or who my favorite director was, I mean, there's so many to pick, and it really depends on my mood during the day, what kind of day I'm having. But if you were to ask me who my favorite actor is, Nick Cage, hands down. Okay, Brendan Fraser's a very close second, but Nick Cage at the end of the day. And that's not just because of how entertaining he is genuinely a very talented actor. He's just like a bucking bronco, you gotta rein that guy in because he can go crazy. And can you blame him? I mean, you have all those montages on YouTube of him losing his shit on camera, and he sees that and he's just like, okay, people want crazy Cage, I'm gonna give them more of that. Don't blame him for listening to his audience, but he can be entertaining in those roles or put on a very nuanced performance in others. And I was so excited to see him in this movie particularly because Dracula has always been one of Nick Cage's dream roles, right up there with Superman. And I'm so happy for him finally getting to play that part. And of course, we've all seen vampires kiss, or we've seen clips from it at least. We know he's entertaining in these kinds of roles, and I was pumped for this. So what do I think of this movie? What do I think of Nick Cage in it? That is kind of complicated. Starting off with Nick Cage himself, he's as great as you can imagine. He brings just the right amount of Cage hamminess to the role, but also just the right amount of nuance. And I think a good deal of that also has to do with the writing. So what do I think of Nick Cage as Dracula himself? He crushes it. Cage brings all of the craziness that you love about the guy, and also a lot of the nuance in his more subtle performances that you would love. And a big part of that plays into the portrayal of Dracula. I think they made a really good decision in this movie framing the relationship between Renfield and Dracula in terms of a toxic, abusive relationship. Dracula in this film is very much a malignant narcissist, and he has all of the hallmarks. He manipulates Renfield by guilting him, by isolating him from others, and by just lashing out at him when he even senses that he is being threatened or disrespected in the slightest sense. And as the person who has dealt with at least one malignant narcissist in my own life, not gonna name names, but if you're watching this, you know who you are, I found it to be very, very accurate. And Nick Cage himself just puts that on to perfection, from his mannerisms to the way he will never let anybody get a word in, to the fact that he is clearly only comprehending what he thinks and his own outlook on the situation, and not even considering the thoughts and feelings of anybody else. You see in this guy's behavior that anybody around him, in his own mind, is just an extension of him. It is him and food and followers, and that is it. And Nick Cage does it in a way that is accurate so as to be potentially triggering to people who have been in these kinds of relationships with these kinds of people, but also entertaining. He makes this guy a very cool, very stylish take on Count Dracula, and he just steals every scene that he's in. And if I allowed myself to talk any more about Nick Cage's performance, it would take up the whole review, and I got a lot of other people and things in this movie that I got to talk about. One actor who I've got to give mad credit to in this movie is one who I am really glad has been getting more work and more limelight and more appreciation. Nicholas Hoult as Renfield himself. We've seen Nick Hoult in a variety of roles before. We know the guy's got versatility, whether it's playing characters who are trying to find the best versions of themselves, like Beast in the X-Men franchise, or the utterly contemptible, like his character in The Menu. The Renfield he plays in this movie is a fittingly complex character that he manages to play really well, and I really hope that it leads to him getting more roles and getting more of a chance to flex his versatility as an actor, because he's clearly got it. He plays very well off of Nick Cage. The scenes with them together are great. They have great chemistry. When he needs to bring comic timing to the performance, he nails it. When he needs to portray the trauma and just what the Dracula has done to him, he plays it perfectly. When he needs to portray Renfield as a badass, he does that perfectly. Because Renfield is very much a multifaceted character. He's basically sort of Renfield as a superhero, which I find very clever, and I find that the idea of him getting his powers from eating bugs the same way vampires get their powers from drinking blood, I think that's brilliant, and he sells it really well. When he's kicking ass, when he's not in Dracula's presence, you can see that this guy has a very strong confidence to him, but it immediately goes away whenever Dracula comes back into the picture, and he's got to fight off that part of himself to live a full life and to be the best version of himself. I think that is brilliantly written, and I think Nicholas Hoult plays that really well. I think that the whole storyline between Renfield and Dracula is brilliant. I think that is the highlight of the movie, and when it is in the center, the movie is at its best. Can't say the same for what makes up the other half of this film. Renfield feels a lot like two movies put into one, because on top of the story with Dracula and Renfield, you've also got sort of a plucky cop going up against the corrupt system sort of story. Awkwafina plays the cop in question, and just for the record, I don't blame her for the story's lameness at all. She does fine in this role, she's funny, and for those of you who are mad annoyed by her and Raya and the Last Dragon, I promise you she's not nearly that bad. She gives a good performance in this movie. It's the writing that's the problem. The whole premise is that her father was a good cop, one of the few, got killed by a corrupt mafia family, and she's trying to finish what he started and live up to his legacy. We've seen it before, there's nothing unique or charming about it, and it's when the movie focuses on this plot that it's at its worst, unfortunately. And the mob family in question, they're fine, I guess. Ben Schwartz plays the son of the mob leader, and believe it or not, he actually manages to out-ham Nick Cage. Sometimes in an entertaining way, other times in an annoying way. He kind of flips back and forth between the two. And I am so ashamed that I can't pronounce this actress's name. Shohreh Aghdashloo, I think. I wish I could pronounce her name properly. She's fantastic, and she's great in this movie too. It's just that the writing for her character is kind of generic. So yeah, very interesting, very layered, very fascinating story merged with this generic story that probably could have been good if it had been given more room to breathe. But it feels like the cop story was just given the barest outline and then mixed with another movie to increase the runtime. I think that's exactly what happened, actually. I know this movie was written by two people. I wouldn't be surprised if it turned out they each had like different scripts and they just had so much blank space in there they didn't know what to fill that with for the sake of runtime. So they're just like, by the power of numbers. And then we got this movie. But again, that doesn't mean that the movie's not fun. I really do like the Renfield Dracula storyline, and I love how over the top they get with the action, and I do mean they get over the top. If you are a fan of blooded movies, there is a lot of it. You have Renfield straight up exploding people at certain points in the movie, and somehow none of the blood gets on him or Awkwafina's character. There's one scene where he helps her take out all these guys in a restaurant. He slices a dude's arms off with a tray. He's ripping people apart. And by the end of the scene, everyone in this restaurant who's opposed them has been ripped apart. And Awkwafina, she's just like, that was something. And she says it in the most casual way, like, did you see what this guy just did? For some reason, she never figures out until, wow, my hand like really went in there. Damn, I'm powerful. For some reason, it's only a little past the middle of the film that she realizes that Renfield has superpowers. Like, jeez, what gave him away? But overall, the point is, this movie is entertaining. It's at its best when it's focused on Dracula and Renfield. It's definitely at its worst with the generic cop story. But overall, it still is an entertaining work, especially with Nick Cage and Nick Hoult. Just, just between you and me, maybe don't go in sober. Maybe, you might have a better time that way. Overall, I can give this movie a nice solid 75 on the crispy meter. I know that might not sound like much, but it is pretty crispy. It's a treat. Go to the theaters, sink your fangs into this bitch. Hope you guys liked this review. If you did, please make sure to like, share, subscribe. Come join the Crispy Kingdom. We are all royals here. I also have a gaming channel, a clip channel, and a Twitch. Just for the record, I will be bringing back the gaming and clip channel soon. I just need to figure out how to get streaming working on my new machines. So yeah, once I do that, we're going back into gaming. You will also find links down below to the Global Nerds podcast on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. You will find a link to the channel of the greatest editor ever, the Dark Gale. You will also find a link to a short film that I recently acted in titled One Heart, written and directed by my wonderful friend Mitchie. Thank you guys so much for joining me today, and I hope to see you guys in the next video. This has been Crispy. And that's it. The Krisp is spoken. Take care. I don't know why, I'm just moving like I'm about to rip my shirt off as I'm saying bye to you guys, but I'm just putting my heart out there, I'm just full of love. I'm full of love.